So we're going to start with the selection tools. Now the selection tools in Photoshop are just the top 6 tools right here in the toolbar. And they all deal with basically ways of selecting different things, different types of things, and in some cases manipulating them, right? So we'll just start at the top. We hover over it and we can see that it's called the Move tool. And it does exactly what you think it would. Whatever you click on, it moves it. You can see these little guide markers showing up, like these purple guide marks. What they're doing is telling you, these two things are kind of lined up with each other. It'll do that when I get down to the bottom here too, so it can kind of snap, right? These two things have snapped to the edge here and here, so you kind of make moving things around a lot easier. By default, this tool only works on whatever layer you on. So no matter where I could click on this picture, but it's going to move this layer because that's the layer I'm clicked on. If I want to move the picture that's behind here, I have to go to that layer and move it. I have a tendency to turn on auto select for this because then it gets a little bit smarter, right? It says, oh, you're clicking on these brush strokes? Well, now you can move this. Oh, you're clicking on this image? Now we'll move this one. It makes it so you don't have to keep clicking over here. It just makes life a little bit easier. And it auto puts you on that layer. So if you move this and then you think, oh, I want to erase something, you'll be on this layer. You won't be, forgetting which layer you're on. All right. Now, let's see. Oop, just opened something I shouldn't have. The next one would be this Marquee Tool. Now there's a few different shapes. There's rectangular, elliptical, a single row, single column. If what you're trying to select, you need something a little bit rounded, use elliptical. Otherwise, use the rectangle. What this allows you to do is kind of drag select a bunch of stuff. In this case, if I drag select half of this image, right? I've said before that whatever you have selected, you can only work inside there. So if I grab my eraser tool, I can't erase anything except inside my selection. Let's undo. But you can combine this with the Move tool, right? So I use the Marquee tool to drag select a certain area. And then I use the Move tool, and now it only moves what I had selected. So now I've kind of split this image in half. I use this a lot because I want to, maybe split images in half, or, there's different objects in an image. I want to take a piece of this and then another piece of this, kind of move them around. Remember that Control D lets you deselect, so that this is no longer selected, and these two things are now in the same layer, so they're going to move together unless I, once again, use the Marquee tool, select just one half, and then go back and use the Move tool. And then Control D gets rid of the selection. And you might be thinking, like, well, how often do you really need to just split something, down the middle like that? And you're correct. So what you often have to use is the Lasso Tool. The Lasso Tool, get in real close to all these silly, like, doorknobs. Let's say, hang on, let's undo a little bit, put this picture back together. There we go. Let's say I want to collect this doorknob right here, right? This little handle right here. But I don't want to have to deal with erasing the rest of this. This is a lot to work with. I want to simplify things. So I take this Lasso tool and I click and I kind of vaguely draw around the object. This is what the Lasso tool does. You can draw your selection. It's not just a square, it's not just a circle, right? I draw my selection around this and I can copy paste, Control C, Control V, right? And now I've got to copy it over here. And this means that, however I'm manipulating it, whether it's using erasers or anything like that, I now have a lot less that I have to deal with because I don't have to worry about any of the rest of this. I can just concentrate on, getting my edges good on this one particular piece. All right. Speaking of edges, there's a couple of very important tools for selection under here. We're actually going to go to the second one first. The Quick Selection tool looks like a paintbrush with a little dotted line around it. But if you click and hold on it, you get the magic wand tool. Now this is something I use a lot. We're going to zoom in, right? And what the magic wand tool does is you click on an area, and whatever pixel you click on, it's going to kind of measure the color and lightness of that pixel. And it's going to select any and all pixels around it that are similar. How similar? Well, that depends on how high a number you have up in tolerance. If you have a very low number in tolerance, it's only going to select pixels that look really, really close to the one you just selected. If you have a really high number, it's going to select things that don't even almost look like each other. So if I put this up to like 60, it's a really high number, right? It actually went around the whole thing, but it also took the dark spot that was up on the top of this, which means I'm actually way cutting into the handle. We don't want that. So we're going to undo. If I turn this down, I'm going to turn it down to like 5. You can see it barely even gets that one dark spot. It's set to 32 by default because that's actually not a bad place to start. You can see right there, it kind of does a decent job. It doesn't take the top of this like the other one did. It also doesn't take this one spot. That's okay. We can get rid of that later. And so I hit delete, and it gives me not a terrible selection, right? You know, I can then select this part differently, although actually that's going a little bit too much into it, so I'm going to change that to 15. There we go. That's cutting a little bit less into there. Whoops. And so you can kind of work your way around. You can, if you want to, let me deselect. You can kind of click once and then hold down shift. You can see a little plus mark shows up, and kind of start clicking around the thing you're trying to select, and it'll add to the selection. And then when you're done, you hit backspace. But you have to be careful with that. Here's why. If you hold on shift and you select something, and you keep going and going, and then you hit something that goes into the bell. If you're not paying attention, you can hit undo, but if you're not paying attention and you go, too many deep, and then you hit backspace, you might end up cutting a hole in what it is you're trying to look at. So you want to be careful. I mean, you can always undo, but you don't want to do a lot of work and then realize you messed it up. So I usually do like a few clicks and then hit delete, and I see what it looks like. All right. The other tool that is under the magic wand, that's the first tool, the quick selection tool. This I don't have as much use for because I don't have as many options. I can't change its tolerance level. So basically, if I click somewhere, I have to be on the layer. But if I click somewhere, oh, this is interesting. You can change the tolerance, but it's not under this tool. You can change the tolerance in the magic wand tool, and it will change the tolerance of that other tool. There's actually a lot of funny things like that in these programs where you change something in one place and it affects the other tool. If I go back to the quick selection tool, yeah, you can see this whole beam separate. So that makes it a little bit better. I still don't use it that often because it's kind of like having the magic wand tool, but you don't hold down shift and you can't change it in between strokes. But you can see as I click on spaces, it kind of tries to find the things that belong to each other, and so it's kind of adding, you can see, to my selection along the lines it thinks it should. It takes a much broader definition of that tolerance number though, because this is nothing like, these dark colors are nothing like these light colors. It's kind of more looking for the outline. It's trying to figure, oh, well, if I wanted this that's here, I probably want this whole brass knob that's there. If I click here on the blue one, see how it kind of tried to take a lot of stuff. So it's taking that same number, that number 32, but it's taking a much, it's not looking necessarily at identical pixels. It's more trying to find the shape of what it was you were trying to select in the first place. So I can kind of go in here, and then that way when I go to delete it, you can see it kind of left me with an edge. It's not a terrible edge at any one place, right? Like it got that screw nicely. We can see here, but like it cut this one off because maybe there's something in front of it. This one is nice, but like some of this stuff is a little cut off. So I don't use this tool that much, but your mileage may vary. There we go. Unselect. Next up, we have the crop tool. The crop tool, use it all the time. It's very important to know. So let's say you've created your masterpiece. It's done. It's wonderful. You love it, except this is not the size you want to work with. You've got way too much dead white area. All right. The crop tool, you click that, and you get these outlines. And if you click on them, you can kind of drag them in. And what's going to happen once you hit enter is that it will crop the image to wherever you put this, right? So if I stick this here, everything that's grayed out is going to go away. So I hit enter, and now all that stuff goes away. Now if I go back to my crop tool, I'm going to go like this. I'm going to crop it, right? Photoshop doesn't remember, where these things were, right? So it crops off, it loses, right, all your stuff. Let me go away here. So you've got to be careful how you crop. Hit enter, go back to the move tool. Yep, that picture is no longer there. So just know that when you're using the crop tool, it's called destructive editing. You are making things go away. Right now, if I put this on the edge and I work on a bunch of other stuff for a while and I select all these other layers and do all these other things, I can come back to this layer and I can recover the parts that were kind of above here. That's not true if you crop it. So cropping is usually used at the very end, right? Like you're done. I might save this document and then save as another thing so that I don't ruin what I've been cropping, just in case, because your client might say, hey, I want it to be cropped differently. The last selection tool that we want to go over is this little eyedropper tool. This does not really allow you to manipulate anything directly. What it does is you can look at something and say, oh, I love this color of blue-gray. I want to use that color. Well, the eyedropper, a lot of people call it the color picker. You click on that, and it puts you at that color in your color wheel right here, right? So it's telling you this color blue is this much blue, it's this dark, it's this saturated, and then you can then use that color, can put it somewhere else. If I want to now use a brush tool, I can have that color of blue. Now just know that the funny thing is a lot of times things look different on here than they do when you use them on a brush tool. Like you wouldn't think that that blue was this dark or that highlight was this white, but that's because what I'm selecting is one individual pixel all the way down here. If we go all the way down, bitmap image, right, individual pixels, I ended up selecting one of these really light pixels. But what my eye is seeing is the combination of all of them, right? It's seeing all of them as this one sort of purple patch. Same with the dark blues. So you might end up accidentally with a much darker color than you were thinking. So a lot of times I use the color picker to kind of put myself in the correct hue, right? That's the color of the color. So I put myself in the correct, area. There we go. It's a pretty bluish blue. It's not very green or red. And then I can maybe lighten it up a little bit, right? And then I can use the brush tool and it'll give me what I was looking for, right? So it puts me in the ballpark and then I change it a little bit. That's a pretty common way to use this also. All right, but those are your selection tools. There are other tools. If you notice, you can click and hold on any one of these and it'll give you lots of options. Some of them are just variations on the same thing, right? The lasso tool is a curved line. The polygonal lasso tool is you click and click and click, and it does like a straight lines as an outline. It doesn't curve it, but it's still the same idea. Other times you have tools that are kind of very completely different, like these guys, but we're not going to get into those because that's sort of way into the weeds on this.